This episode is brought to you by Rainbow Sports Group. Rainbow Sports Group are a leading football infrastructure platform looking to discover and nurture the best young African talent. Rainbow's infrastructure allows players to be placed in a global football ecosystem with the full support throughout their career. For more information, visit rainbow-sports.com.
This is the Glenn Hoddle Footy Show. I'm Glenn Hoddle.
Well, Glenn, it's episode 10 of the podcast tonight. The only place to start is the really sad news breaking on this Sunday afternoon of the death of Ray Clemence, former goalkeeper and team colleague of yours, and also former England coach as well. He died at the age of 72. He'd been ill for a long, long time, but your memories of Ray must be terrific. Must be very happy memories that you had with him.
Well, yes, I'm first and foremost today, it's, very, very sad, and my heart goes out for V and Stephen, Sarah and Julie, the family who I've known, over the years very well. So it's a very sad moment, but I will always reflect back on all the great memories that I had with Ray on and off the pitch. He battled this terrible disease for a long time, nearly 15 years. He wouldn't give in to it. He was quite incredible, actually, when we met up at Tottenham quite a few times after matches. It was an example to everyone, that if you got this dreadful thing, that you can, you have to attack it, and that's what Ray did, and that's what he was like in his career. He was a wonderful lad. He really was a great guy to be around. Very funny, very humorous, great company, a fabulous goalkeeper. I was asked to put my best 11 out that I've ever played with. Ray was in between the sticks in my team. In my opinion, he's a very unselfish goalkeeper. But it's a sad day, and it's it's only been sort of an hour ago that I found out. I went to actually see him with Ozzy Ardiles and Maxi Miller and John Lacey about 3 or 4 weeks ago at his home. And although he'd just come out of the hospital back home, he was battling still. He still, was walking with a Zimmer frame, and obviously things turned in the last 4 weeks. But it's very, very sad. But what a fabulous goalkeeper, and a great, a sad loss to football. It really is. It really is. He's done so much for Liverpool and for Tottenham. When he came to Spurs, we weren't the team that we were. Like Liverpool were, and all them years he played with us, and he never mentioned Liverpool once, really, about what he achieved at Liverpool. Right. To sort of, it was about that chapter had finished, and he moved on, and he wanted to do a new experience. And I reflected on that in the last half an hour, and I can't remember him ever saying anything about Liverpool unless he was asked a question, in the sense that I've done this, I've done that. Yeah. No, he was very humble in the achievements that he had at Liverpool, and he brought us success. He was a massive part of our success in the 80s.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Just looking back in his career, and obviously I grew up watching him as a Liverpool and Tottenham goalkeeper, England goalkeeper as well, of course. But not many players who'd played for Liverpool in the 70s and 80s left the club and went on to win things with another big club. A lot of the Liverpool players that left were at the end of their careers, and they kind of faded away. Not Ray Clemence. He was at Tottenham for 7 years, played over 200 games for them, and really his career just continued after it left Anfield.
Well, it certainly did, and that showed the talent that he had and the determination to succeed. And that he was a perfect professional, because he could relax. He liked a beer, he liked to laugh, but when he put his game head on in training or match day, we always used to take the mickey out of him a little bit. He was always the last, the old communal baths. We used to have them at White Hart Lane. Yeah. And you know what? He was always perhaps the last to come out of the bath, because he was absolutely shattered in every match. And we used to say, well, you haven't run around like we have. But it was the mentality of the game.
Yeah.
He was having to kick and concentrate. That was mind-blowing to me. It really was. His mental strength was, and he was absolutely shattered. He was always the last out, normally last out of the dressing room. And it just showed you the high concentration levels that he put into his game.
He was in a difficult period with England, wasn't he? Because he was at the same time as Peter Shilton, and they're probably the best two goalkeepers we've ever had as England goalkeepers. And to be in the same timeline is so unlucky. If they'd have been 10 years apart, they would have both had many more caps than they got.
Well, I think Peter got 125 and Ray got 67, was it? Something like
61 I've got down here. I'm not sure if that's correct, but we'll go with that.
That's they're two wonderful goalkeepers. Peter Shilton was a wonderful goalkeeper as well.
Yeah.
But perhaps I'm a bit biased because I played with Ray at club level as well. But no, as you say, if they'd have come along in a different generation, either of them would have probably doubled that. Quite incredible, really. That and in those days, in the late 70s and 80s, we had a lot of very, very good goalkeepers. English goalkeepers were, best in the world at that time. They really were, and we had a real sort of glut of them. Ones that people didn't even get a chance to see near the England shirt because of Clem and because of Peter Shilton in many ways. Yeah.
He was bought by Liverpool by the great Bill Shankly, so you can tell he was a good goalkeeper because Shanks didn't buy anything that was less than over brilliant. And then people forget perhaps that you took him on as well in the England national team as your goalkeeping coach, and he stayed around as well after you. He was under 2 or 3 other managers, Sven-Göran Eriksson as well, and then Roy Hodgson brought him back as coach after a while. So he was obviously revered by many managers as giving a lot of experience to the keepers.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I put my team together, my backroom staff with the England job, Clem was always straight away was the first in my mind. I remember spending the evening at his house, still the house where he lived now, and in Broxbourne, and I remember going round and spending 2 or 3 hours. He was manager of Barnet at the time, and I was trying to. He wasn't sure. He was, and V, his wife, kept looking and saying, get him to sign, get him to go to England. This is a wonderful opportunity. Yeah. So it was 3 or 4 hours, of sitting there having numerous cups of tea and having a chat and talking about the job. And in the end, I persuaded him to come. And as you say, he outlasted quite a few managers, myself included. And he was there for many, many years. And lots of people at the FA loved him. He was great company, great spirit. I remember going in the office and, you'd hear a great big squeal and a laughter from one of the offices and whatever, and you knew Clem was in there and making everyone laugh. And he was, as I say, he knew that balance between having a real casual, relaxed atmosphere and having that professional head on and doing his job. He had that to an art, and I don't think I've ever come across anyone like that in football or in life myself. So I learnt a lot from Ray. It was a pleasure to play with him, pleasure to know him, and lots of games of golf with him as well. So it was I'm truly going to miss him like a lot of people, but I really feel for his family, for Steve and Sarah and Julie and all his grandchildren. I think he's got about 9 grandchildren as well, but that's it's a sad day today.
Well, we certainly pass on our condolences to all of his family. Great Ray Clemence passing away at 72 today. Football continues, of course, and none more so poignant than England are in action on this Sunday. They go to Belgium to play in that Nations League. Is the Nations League on top of Gareth Southgate list of things to win, or is he happy just to go along there and get a bit more training days and a bit more formation into his squad?
No, I think if you're England manager, any tournament that you go into, you're going to try and win, because that's the size of the England job. It's one of the biggest jobs in the world. Probably Brazil manager is probably bigger, but there's not many bigger jobs and pressurised jobs than the England job. So if you can win a trophy whilst you're there, I was fortunate enough to win one. We won the Letourne World the year before the World Cup in '97, and it was a very proud moment. And I'm sure Gareth will be looking at it like that. Yes, of course he'll see some players performing, but I think it's a good idea what UEFA did, and these games now are a little tad more competitive than a friendly match. So there's a trophy at the end of it, and there's a semi-final scenario to be going, and all them experiences are going to stand you in good stead for the Euros or a World Cup in future. So I think it's important that England go there with a real sort of winning head on. Yes, they'll want a good performance, but they know it'll be a tough game. But it's about winning that game. It's about getting that win under your belt, and every England manager is under that pressure, whether it's a friendly or whatever game for England. That's the nature of the beast.
They really need to win in this evening's game. They're in Belgium, who've got 9 points. England have got 7. They've all played 4 games, so a draw really isn't good enough. But what do you expect from the team tonight? The setup. I'll ask you how you think Gareth will set up and how you would set it. Would it be different? We're not going to have these 2 defensive midfielders in there, are we? Please tell me we're not.
Well, I think we might do because of Belgium is such a good side.
Yeah, I thought you might say that.
I think if you're opening the doors to people, but they've got players that could punish you. So I could understand if Gareth does go in there with, say, Henderson and Rice, for instance. But he might go with a Grealish playing in behind Harry Kane and giving him a little bit of a license to roam. That would be an interesting midfield because I think Grealish deserves the chance, and I think even more so he's played out on the left-hand side normally for his club, and he comes and drifts in. But I think if he was given that license to go and play, if you're having 2 holding players, I think you'd look for a Mount playing in there or a number 10, if you like, a Maddison. But I think Grealish can play that role as well.
Yeah, but he doesn't seem to think that, does he, Gareth? He seems to want to play him on the wings, instead of Raheem or instead of Sancho. That's the kind of lineup he's gone for, isn't it?
Yeah, that's where I think it restricts Grealish a little bit. It would simplify it for him. Definitely for him to go and play in what I call the arc and just go out to the right, get in the box, come deep, come left. Just have it's not a free role. People say it's a free role. It does my head in when I hear people saying it's a free role. It's the most important role in the team. It gives you the chance. If your number 10 is on song, like a De Bruyne or someone, you normally win the game. So, this free role makes me laugh. Always has done, but it's a very, very important position. Probably looked at more important from abroad than it is in England. But we've come round to it, and I would like to see him play in that position. Not necessarily with his back to play. I think I'd like to test to see if he's cute enough to go into positions and then drift off defenders to get that space. And I think he could hurt teams even more from that position, and then be allowed to go out wide on the right and the left. See, because I think he's an all-round good player. I think he certainly deserves his chance. That's for sure. I think Mount's done very well for England, and I think Maddison will do well, and I think Foden will do well. There's probably a lot of competition there for that type of player if Gareth wants to play at number 10 or a different style of player if he wants to play him out wide.
Belgium's best player over the last few years has been Eden Hazard, but he's had so many injuries, and then already he'd got the coronavirus as well, so I don't think he's going to be able to play. So their next best player is clearly De Bruyne. And would you be man-marking him as a manager, or would you just be saying, just keep on, watch the zone that he operates in, because he operates in quite a big zone, doesn't he?
No, you can't man for mark nowadays. I think it's very difficult in the modern game with the rules. Years ago, when teams would mark a number 10 or the creative player, it was a lot easier for them. They could get really tight, they could tug your shirt a few times without getting booked, they could make a few harsh tackles. And man-for-man marking is what people don't realise was to stop the ball being given. Other players would be told, let's get the ball to, let's say, Maradona or Platini, or whoever it would be.
Yeah.
But you'd look up and players would look and he'd be so tightly marked in areas that people wouldn't give him the ball. And in the end, they had to give him the ball because he was good enough to get off the hook. But so you're cutting down the percentages of passes that are given to him by people looking at him saying, he's marked, I'll go somewhere else. But that was why you marked a man for man, as well as stopping him when he did get possession. So there was 2 reasons. Now that doesn't happen. You can't man for man mark, and that's the reason why you'll see probably two players in there to maybe deal with the spaces for De Bruyne dropping into the holes. If you give him space in there, he will hurt you, he'll kill you. So at the end of the day, I think it's I think that's the system that he'll look for, and I think he'll play more of a 10, an attacking 10 behind Harry Kane, but two more, not sitters, but Henderson will get involved as and when, but they'll defensively, those two will be a unit together that won't spread too far apart, and they'll be like a block that will stop them spaces, hopefully for people like De Bruyne to get onto the ball.
Now, we know you're very good at tipping results because you were second in that Lillywhite Foundation's predictor game last year. Not that you've mentioned that every week so far, but we'll brush over that and say, how do you think the game's going to go tonight? Can England go to Belgium and win? Do you think they can do it?
I think they've got a chance. I think we've got, some firepower up. Whoever we play up front, whoever plays, I think there's enough creative players in the team. That's where we're at our strength. I think we need to be solid defensively. I think they're going to have to, perform really well defensively as a unit, not just the back three or back four or back five. However Gareth decides to play the system. Yes, I think we can go there and win. I think we've done it. We've done it to other teams away from home. I think England can be a very good counter-attacking side. Mm-hmm. I don't think we look at ourselves and say, yes, this is what we're going to do. Certain teams you look at and you know that they play that way, and they get success about it. I think we could actually be a very good whoever we're playing. It doesn't matter. Let teams come onto them, and it would make us tighter defensively. That's where our Achilles heel is. When we open up as a team trying to go forward and we have to defend 1v1s, I think it would suit us maybe to be a counter-attacking side certainly for the tournament next summer, but they're certainly good enough to go there. It's going to be tough. They're going to have to put in a really good 8 or 9 out of 10 performance to win the game. I probably, if I was having a bet on it, which I haven't done, all my money's gone on the Masters this week, but I would probably go for a draw, 1-1 draw.
Would you? Okay. And now you watched the under-21s the other night, the England under-21s playing against Andorra, 3-1 victory. I was hoping you're going to watch Jude Bellingham, but he got called up to the senior squad, so that's taken that one off the sheet. But who stood out for you on that night? I know Hudson-Odoi played, Jones played, the Liverpool striker, Brewster played from Sheffield United. Was there anyone that really stood out? You kind of think they're on the verge, on the brink?
Well, there was a few good players, actually, good performances. It was a tough old game for them in the end. Andorra sounds easy, but they made it very difficult for England to break down. I thought Curtis Jones did himself a lot of favours. He looked a mature player. He looked like he'd had some experience in the first team at Liverpool. And, of course, at the moment at Liverpool, you've got some fabulous players around him. You've got a successful club. You've got good habits around him. You've got, experienced players that will put him, give him a little clip round the ear when he needs it, but also will give him a lot of encouragement, and he'll learn a lot very quickly. And he looks like a player that can be very creative. Hudson-Odoi looked like he was a level above, to be quite honest. He was a little bit relaxed at times, and his end product might have been better, but I think with a better focus he would have been excellent. But he did some good things. Yes, they did. They had some good performances. Williams, the Liverpool Rhys Williams, the Liverpool defender, played well, used the ball exceedingly well. They had some really good performances on a tough night for them, and they broke the Andorran defence down in the end. Yeah. But it was, I think Curtis Jones is one to look, might be the next crop of youngsters coming through.
We've got a few good ones, as you say, and that's really positive for the future. On the same week, of course, Scotland qualified for the Euros 2020, which will be played in 21. They're in Group D with England, Croatia, and the Czech Republic. So well done to them, and well done to Steve Clarke, who's a player for you at Chelsea. He was your right back when you were the Chelsea player manager there. Did you always sort of think Steve's, obviously not going to be a manager for his country in particular, but he had the footballing brain, did he?
Yeah, I think so. I think looking back at Steve, he was, he did a great job for me for the 3 years I was there. He was our right back or a wing back when we played with a different shape. Very, very, very good professional, great example. And I felt he was one that was always thinking about the game. He'd ask you questions, he'd want to know whys. I always liked players like myself when I was a player. Why are we doing that? why are we playing that way? Why? And I think then you can get the answers and take it on from there. And Steve was one that was always, you could almost see him sort of thinking. I used to think, I bet he goes home and writes quite a lot of the drills down, the training that we did, and I think he was quite studious like that. And I could see that he possibly could go into management. And it's great to see him. There's nothing like managing your country, and for him to qualify is fabulous. It really is, and to do it on penalty shootouts as well was an incredible result for them. And I mean, it's going to be the Battle of Britain again, isn't it? And at Wembley, it's I think it's the 18th of June, is it?
We can only hope the crowds will be back in by then, can't we?
Well, let's hope so, because that I've played in that fixture, whether it was the home nations or. It is just an incredible atmosphere. The rivalry is second to none. It really is. The times you play against Scotland, you're going to have a tough game. Doesn't matter what the teams are and where your rankings are. It was always tough, and you always, certainly at Hampden, you always felt you were playing against 12 men. And certainly sometimes at Wembley, you felt like you were playing 12 men. They took over Wembley, didn't they, on numerous occasions? But I think
they took the goals over on one occasion, I remember.
Didn't they? Yeah. I remember watching that as a kid. Yeah, but no, it was always a great fixture, and it was one of those years ago, where you had the cup final was live on telly, and the only other live football really was the England-Scotland game. Yeah. And that was the one that you had back-to-back weeks. I know as a kid, being very excited about whoever was in the FA Cup, and then watching the England-Scotland game live was incredible. So to play in it and to experience it was phenomenal. But it's going to be a hell of a battle. Yeah, it's no easy game when England plays Scotland, whether it's at Tiddlywinks. It doesn't matter. It's competitive, and form, if you like, goes out the window.
With lockdown, I'm surprised we haven't got Tiddlywinks on the telly at the moment. Everything else is on there.
You mean you're not playing, Chris? You're not playing now? No,
I've done my thumb in. I've got my dummy thumb. I can't.
Well, I must admit, my thumb's been really sore from playing Tiddlywinks.
Stop it.
A bit of ice on it.
I was sitting quite nicely and calmly in front of my computer last week, and then put Twitter on there, and then Hoddle starts trending. Hoddle's trending on Twitter. So I phoned you up and said, Glenn, you're trending on Twitter. And you're very calm about it. You went, yeah, that's great. What do I do now? Nothing, just sit and don't do anything. The reason you were trending on Twitter is a guy called Sava, who's a Tottenham fan, and they were asking Tottenham fans in particular who was the best passer of the ball at Spurs ever. And there was only one answer, really, and it was you. It was either Hoddle, Hod, God, the man with the left and the right foot. It was you. So I said to them, I'm going to ask Glenn, was there a better player at Tottenham, a better passer of the ball when you were there, or one that you've seen at Tottenham, first of all, at the club? Was there a better passer of the ball, or were you the best passer of the ball in that squad?
I can't answer that.
You can. Just be honest.
I remember my answer to you when you said, "Oh, you're trending," and I said, "What does that mean?"
Yeah, well, I didn't want to say that. I thought,
what's trending? I'm
I didn't want to put you in that one. Yeah.
I'm thinking, what have I done now?
Look, you've been a goat and you've been trending. You're learning all the time.
I'm learning about this social media.
So if you were in training at Tottenham and Ozzy was with you and Ricky was with you and maybe Mickey Hazard was with you, passing the ball 50 yards, you're going to hit the target 9 out of 10, aren't you?
Oh yeah, that was. I got as much. I'll answer it this way. I'm not going to say, who and who, but I got as much pleasure out of hitting passes and creating chances for people as scoring goals. And I had that I remember that since I was sort of 10 when I played at very junior level. I got as much pleasure. Sometimes, a tap-in goal. If I score, I didn't score many from the 6-yard box, but if I hit a really good pass and someone scored a good goal off it, I would get more pleasure out of that than a tap-in. I mean, most of my goals were outside the box or in and around the penalty area. But no, I just had this natural ability to play the without sounding, big-headed. I'm just being honest, and I was lucky. I had this ability with both feet, even when I was a kid, when I was 4, 5, 6. Mum and Dad would say, just both feet you could play. But I think as I grew, I learned how to play with the outside of both feet. and obviously the inside of your feet which is easier. But so I had a lot of angles that I could recreate with my foot to actually make a pass. And I think that's what was a real sort of my real gift in many ways. When I look back on my career and some of the passes and stuff, the inside and the out, it was the ability to have 2 feet, yes, and be balanced off 2 feet, but to create angles with the outside of your foot and your inside of your foot to curl a ball. And I used to love playing into a wind. I used to love being able to use the wind as well. So whether that's, unique or not, I don't know. I don't think so. I see players do it. De Bruyne does it with his right foot inside and outside.
Yeah, but you're talking 30 years later with different kind of balls these days, Glenn. Yeah. When you were doing it, there was you and there was no one else. Now, De Bruyne does it, but there's 10 others can do it as well. We have evolved, and the game's evolved, the ball's evolved. It's a lot easier. Like you said to me, if Maradona played on these pitches, he'd be unbelievable. If you played with this ball, you'd be top corner, top bins every week, wouldn't you?
You wouldn't. You'd have to get used to it as you would do anyway, because as a kid you brought up. But no, it was just, that was one of the things. Whether you're the best or you're the second best or whatever, it's just lovely to. I love watching great passes. Now I'm waiting for that beautiful pass.
Yeah,
and that's where I quite like watching. I think Connor Cody hit some great passes playing in that sweeper position.
Well, the Wolves player.
Yeah, I think if you watch his passing, he doesn't. He's in the England squad, and he's rightly so. He's gone up a level. He's a good defender as well. But I tell you, he uses the ball really well, and cuts across the ball. And there's a lot of players, but people like David Beckham, Steven Gerrard. Their techniques were excellent, fantastic passers of the ball. They really are in a different era. They could, what I call, play with the ball. You cut across it because you know what you're doing, and you're fading. It's a little bit like watching golf. I know we're going to talk about the Masters because it's Masters the week, but it's like a golfer, who can just fade the ball right or left or draw the ball, and that's where some footballers play. I certainly visualised that with my feet. It was, and I, in coaching sessions, I've said to players, we're going to go through I want to, if any of the players, most players understand golf, give me a 7-iron, a pass that's a 7-iron over a mannequin, to practice. All right, I want a lob wedge. And now I want a 3-iron, where you drill it, and so it's a visual sort of thing with your golf and football. And
you must have been a nightmare to play for if you didn't like golf. They must have been thinking, "Oh, for God's sake, shut up!" You'll be getting Phil Mickelson's wedge out in a minute. Oh, whatever.
I wish I could do it with a golf club. Yeah. That's the problem.
Could have made a bit more money than you did. I remember when you were Chelsea player manager, and I lived in Germany at the time. I came over for the FA Cup final when we lost 4-0 to Man United, and you were on the bench, and I kept shouting it, just come on, get on the pitch, because you're the best player. And you didn't come on till about the 70th minute or something, and I'm like, we were 3-0 down by then. I'm like, Glenn, why aren't you playing? You were the best player. Just get on.
Not really, but
too modest. You're too modest.
I was playing off one leg then, if I remember.
Well, if I can answer those Twitter fans, Glenn was the best at Spurs, no doubt, and definitely one of the best I've seen. I spoke to the late great Ray Wilkins a few years ago, and he wasn't as modest as you. He just said to me, when I was at my peak, Chris, I could hit a ball 80 yards with my left or my right foot, and it would be there. I'm like, fair enough, Ray. You knew what you could do, and he could do it, and you could do it as well. So let's see if you get your trending on Twitter. Get Hoddcast trending on that thing, and I'll ring you up again and surprise you. We are going to talk about the golf in a minute. We have Warren Pike from Eligo Golf to talk about the Masters, and then we'll come back and we'll finish off the podcast. If you want to get in touch, you know how to do all of that by now. This episode is brought to you by Rainbow Sports Group. The Rainbow Sports Group are a leading football infrastructure platform looking to discover and nurture the best young African talent. The CEO, Kingsley Pungong, is an agent, club owner, academy owner, and a huge investor in promoting African football. He sees philanthropy as part of his business model and is intent on leaving a lasting legacy for African football. For more information, visit rainbow-sports.com. You're listening to the Glenn Hoddle Footy Show podcast. If you'd like to get in touch with Glenn, this is how to do it.
To get in touch with Glenn with a question for a future Footy Show podcast, you can email glenn at midnightuk.co.uk or send a tweet to @midnightmix.
Well, it's the Masters golf tournament, very late this year, 6-month delay. We're in the autumn at Augusta this year. The 4 days of the Masters, always a terrific event, and we look forward to enjoying it. It's going to be the last day of the Masters when we record the podcast, but on the Saturday, we're having a chat now with Warren Pike, who's from Eligo Golf, former pro golfer himself, who's played the course. Let's talk to him and Glenn and find out a little bit more about the golf that we all love and enjoy. And Warren, thanks for joining us on the podcast. Terrific golfing event at the Masters, and I guess it's an event that you would watch every year.
Oh, certainly the Masters is a highlight of the year. It's, for most golfers, the Masters, the Open, and of course the Ryder Cup. The Ryder Cup's obviously every other year, but the Masters is just a fantastic event. I think for a couple of reasons. I think first, it's played there every year, so we're familiar with the golf course. We know, even though many of us haven't played it, fortunately, I thought I'd slip that into the conversation. I've managed to play it.
He has the bugger.
Yeah. But, the fact watching it, people get to know the golf course. They feel as if they know it, even though they haven't played it. And I think that adds to the excitement and the enjoyment of the Masters. But, yeah, it's definitely the highlight of the year in terms of watching golf.
That's very true, Warren, actually. Sorry, Chris, it's very true. You sit there year after year. Normally, it's quite strange with not seeing all the flowers in behind some of them holes because it's in November, and I know the course is going to be slightly different, but it still looks magnificent. When did you play it? What time of year did you play it, Warren?
Well, I was very lucky. I played it a couple of years ago. Well, actually 2 years ago, last April. So I played it the week before the Masters. So all the stands were up. I think I played it on the Thursday before the Masters. So you can imagine the golf course was absolutely stunning. But it's quite a funny story, really, before I go into the details. So obviously, I was a little bit heavier in terms of weight a couple of years ago. And let me tell you, Augusta is the hilliest golf course you could ever imagine. I know many of you have already heard that, but, whatever you think it is, times it by 2. It's crazy. So I arrived on a Wednesday night. You have to be met by a member. The member has to host you all the time. So I arrived on a Wednesday night, met the member. Name's John Carr, very nice Irish guy. And we had dinner. We had a few glasses of wine, and then during dinner he said, "Let's play 36 holes tomorrow." And I'm thinking, I've been to the Masters as a spectator for a few years, but I'm thinking I am not going to physically get around 36 holes walking. Because it is the hilliest golf course that I've ever played by miles. Anyway, so we wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning. We've all got a bit of a headache, and there's a frost. And, they're obviously the other 2 guys, like the other 3 guys we were playing with, were absolutely gutted. Whereas I was delighted because I knew they wouldn't let us play if there's a frost. So I knew the frost would clear, but it meant I didn't have to play 36 holes. So for me, I'm probably the only person on this planet who was quite pleased not to play 2 rounds of golf at Augusta. But instead, we played the par 3 course that they haven't done this year because of COVID and it's in a more confined area. But the par 3 tournament that they played the Wednesday before, we played that. Instead of playing 36 holes, we played that. Then we went on the golf course. Well, the par 3 course is even hillier than the main course. Right. So to cut a long story short, I walked on we had a bit of spare time. I went to the pro shop. I was double, triple XL size then. So I went into the pro shop, got myself kitted out, bought all new clothes, put them on, went on to the first tee on this par 3, played the first, played the second. The third hole is a very steep downhill, 100-yard wedge par 3. Well, halfway down, I lost my footing. And I absolutely went arse over tit down this hill. I got totally covered in mud. I did about 3 or 4 roly-polies, and I left a mark all the way down the 3rd fairway on the par 3 course. So I then had to go and get changed. I couldn't carry on playing. So you imagine how dirty, how filthy I was. But when I went back to get changed, the cabin was locked because the member who was still playing on the par 3 had the keys to the cabin. So I had to go into the pro shop Augusta, looking like I'd had 80 minutes of rugby. And saying, can I buy? Have you got any more triple XL clothes?
You had to buy again.
And that was basically my introduction. And I then played the main course a bit later. But there is the story is really funny because the following week I'm watching the par 3 tournament on the Wednesday. And I think this would be interesting because they were filming, I think it was Jack Nicklaus, Tom Watson, and Gary Player, they were. And I'm sitting there thinking, they've just teed off the 3rd. I wonder if that mark's still there that I made. And I promise you, there's not a blade of grass out of place at Augusta, but there was a massive slide mark down the 3rd hole. And one of the commentators said, you don't see that often, a blemish at Augusta.
We need a little plaque put up there, Warren's plaque.
I haven't got a green jacket, but I've got a skid mark down the 3rd hole.
Jacket, yeah. Brilliant.
And is the course as tough as it looks to play? I mean, on TV you can't really tell, as you said, the hilliness of it. You can't see that, but it certainly looks tough with all the undulations, and you've got to play shots into places that you really don't expect to. How difficult is it for a pro to play then, who's not on the tour every week?
Yeah, it's interesting. A couple of quick things. The first is, as I say, the clubhouse sits at the very top of a hill. Like it's the highest part of the golf course, and it basically the entire clubhouse looks down. Anyway, you play the first fairly average, and the second you then suddenly go straight downhill. And as I say, I would imagine for anyone listening, you know, it would be probably the steepest downhill hole you've ever played. That's how I can't emphasize. I mean, it's literally. There would be a black run if there was snow on the ground.
Really? It's that steep, is it?
It's that steep. You have to be careful. Well, you can fall over and hurt yourself. Hence.
Well, you're a past master of that by the sound of things.
But the interesting thing is, and it is interesting, the golf course is wide open. So that's why DeChambeau is decided to get this 48-inch driver so you can hit it anywhere. There's not really any trouble. There's no rough. However, if it wasn't Augusta, the greens are ridiculous. You know, I don't know how many guys have played, say, the Buckinghamshire. The first hole, there's a tier on the green, and I'm sure many people have played golf where there's tiers. I mean, basically, on every green, there's 3 or 4 tiers. Wow. And what makes it really, really, really difficult is, and I made a note to mention this, is if you imagine a typical 10-foot putt, a flat putt. If you were going uphill, you'd have to hit that. So if you imagine the distance that you would hit a standard flat 10-foot putt. If you were going uphill, you'd have to almost hit the putt 20 foot to hit it 10 foot. Does that make sense? Yeah. It's that slow. So you've got to hit it twice as hard. And of course, the opposite is if you're downhill. You've got to hit it, you know, like 3 or 4 feet to go 10 foot. So what makes Augusta so difficult is not just the lines, but to get a feel for the pace. You know, when those golfers out there, you get a feel for the pace of the greens. And, you know, most people don't hit it too far wide. They hit it short or long when they free putt. So in Augusta, you never have a flat putt. So it's so difficult to get distance control. It's ridiculous. And the other key point, just to mention, is the greens, you have to hit them in the right spots. So if you hit it above the hole, you know, you might only be... So the 14th for Augusta, I hit a really good second shot. It's not a slip level. So about 8 foot above the hole. Above the hole. I hit a really good second shot. I'm above the hole, I hit it to 8 foot, and my next putt was 60 foot away.
It went off the green, did it?
It literally was at the front of the green. The pin was at the back. But the funny thing is, if it wasn't Augusta, the rest of us, it would drive us crazy. You'd actually go, you know what, I can't deal with this. It's just brain damage.
Yeah.
So the point is tee to green, it's not that difficult. And I think Ewan Murray said, or Butch Harmon said last night, on Friday night in the commentary, they said, if you put a typical 10 handicap golfer, you know, if they would probably from tee to green hit as many greens at Augusta as they would their home course, but none of them would break 100.
Yeah, that sums up the course.
It's the greens. Yeah. It's the greens.
And also, it looks like around the greens, Warren, is really tough, isn't it? Because it's so tightly knit, you have to whip the ball right off the surface. You know, you've got no fluffy sort of grass there where it's going to be sitting up. And I found, you know, looking at it, that's what amazes me when they just, you know, the pros whip it, you know, right off it's so tight, the grass. And I think amateurs would find that difficult as well.
Well, we've played a few times, Glenn, and I know you love those shots, those sort of like 60, 70, 80-yard shots off a tight line. I hate them. They scare the life out of me. They are so tight, it's like playing off kitchen lino. I mean, it is so tight, and and the other thing is, you know, the 15th hole, Augusta. This gives you an idea of the elevations and undulations. The 15th hole, Augusta. If they lay up in 2, you know, the par 5 over the water.
Yeah.
They lay up in 2, so they've got a 100-yard pitch in. That is downhill. That shot. I mean, I'm talking like a really downhill lie, which is hard. Then on top, it's a tight lie, and then the depth of the green is about 10 yards. I mean,
it goes across, doesn't it? Yeah.
All I'd be thinking about is not going in the water if I was playing that shot. But you're right. It emphasises the skills that these guys have, but the chipping is so difficult. I
think we saw that yesterday. Well, that was on, where are we? Because there's been a round, they've not been finishing rounds. I'm completely, I think it was Friday. Was it Hatton on that hole and Adam Scott both went in the water, didn't they?
Yeah.
And I think was that the hole you're talking about when Molinari was in it and he just hit the branch, didn't he?
Yeah.
That was the hole last year.
Yeah, and that, because he nearly hit Lee Westwood, didn't he, on the way past? Westwood was playing the 16th. Yeah. I mean, but that green is, you know, no more than 10 yards wide. And these guys, you think about that, these guys are hitting like 3 woods into that.
Yeah.
And that's why when they turn the sub-air on today and they dry those greens out, I mean, you know, right now the ball basically is finishing where it pitches, but today and tomorrow,
I think that's what's going to be a problem. Not a problem, but a real test, because as professionals as they are and as good as they are, they get used to a little bit of the Masters and the Augusta greens over 4 days. If you make the cut, you're playing a similar pace to the greens, aren't you? And by the 4th day, I would imagine you know them a little bit more, the speed of them. Whereas probably now the first 2 days has been so much different because they've been receptive, they've had water on them. Now if the weather's changing and they're drying them out, it's suddenly a different ball game because they're going to become quicker and firmer. So, you know, it might take you a day sometimes to get into sync of the speed. So I think that's probably going to be a even bigger problem for them.
It's interesting you say that. So Paul McGinley, we had a Zoom call with our members on Tuesday about the Masters, and it was interesting. So Tiger Woods, I think McIlroy, there was a number of top players that arrived on Monday, saw the weather forecast was torrential rain Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and didn't play a practice round because apparently prior to Tuesday or Wednesday, it was so dry, so fast, and they knew the amount of rain that was forecast, that what's the point? The golf course is going to play so differently. So you're absolutely right that Thursday and Friday, it's played soft. Saturday and today, when obviously everyone's going to be listening to this, they're just going to whip that sub-air, dry those greens out, turn the temperature, heat the grass, and make it as quick as possible. So it's going to be one of the trickier Masters. It's going to be distinctively different from the weekend to the first 2 days.
Just as you mentioned Paul, because I know Paul McGinley's been is he a shareholder of Eligo with you?
Yeah. Paul when I started Eligo, before I started it, I told Paul about my idea, and basically I said, if I pull it off, will you put money into it? And he said, I won't pull it off. So I was delighted about a month later having a pint of Guinness with him in a pub, and said, "Get your checkbook out. You've got to invest in my company." So
I like it.
Yeah.
So did you go back? You knew Paul from when you were young?
Yeah. I think Paul, my one of my best friends was the guy called Ali. Was the assistant pro at Sunnydale. Paul plays a lot of golf at Sunnydale, so I used to play a lot with Paul and Ali at Sunnydale, and so he became a good friend.
And just touching on Eligo then, Warren, where did the idea come from? Because I'm a member myself, and it's just the best thing ever I've ever signed on to. It was fantastic. It really is amazing. So where did you get the concept? Where did you get the idea from?
Basically, I was a pro at a club, and I've had it in my mind for a while, but I kind of saw the members playing every Saturday morning, every Sunday morning, same golf course, same people, and thought, God, you must be so bored of this. Now, as a golf pro, it's easy to sort of you get used to playing great golf courses, but these guys were always saying, Warren, can you get me on this course? Can you get me on that course? So basically, fortunately, 2009, it was just before the last recession, it came up with this idea of, wouldn't it be great to have 5 or 6 golf courses in one membership? And they were Turnberry in Scotland, Monterey in Portugal, Old Head, which you'll know, I think that was the first time we played golf then, was Old Head.
Yeah.
A course in England, and there was 5 or 6 golf courses. And it was the beginning of the recession. I approached them and said, look, I've got about 20, 25 friends that would love to play your course, but they're not going to join because they're only going to play 3 or 4 times a year. They're already a member of a club. It was, as I say, the last recession, I kind of, had my best sales hat on, and, I knew the pros and the GMs, and I convinced them to allow, these 20 friends of mine to play these courses and be treated like as a member, not actually a member of the club, but be treated as a member, like a member. And, the idea was born, and those 20 guys joined. We had 5 or 6 clubs, and they had 20 buddies. That they took and said, can I join? And I thought, well, right, I need to get a few more clubs.
Yeah.
I was just expecting it to be a little sideline business. And 11 years later, we've got 800 members around the world, 160 golf courses, all the very best courses. And, it's great meeting like-minded individuals and playing the best golf course, because the beauty, the love of golf is playing different golf courses. We all love it.
That's the real genius of it, really. It's like you're a member, and you're as you say, you're treated like a member. If you go to any of the courses, and you've got them in Europe, you've got two sort of a split deal, haven't you? You've got Europe with, I don't know how many members you've got, but you've got so many courses in the best courses in Europe. Valderrama being one. It's Old Head, as you said, where we put the old legends. We've got football legends we do every year out in Old Head, which is my favourite course ever. It's so spectacular. If anyone out there gets a chance to go and play Old Head, you got to do it. It's just.
Whereabouts is that, Glenn? Old Head?
It's about 35 minutes from Cork. You fly into Cork, and it's near Kinsale. Kinsale is a beautiful spot, but we have the legends there. We have Man United, Liverpool, Tottenham, Arsenal. We've had Chelsea, haven't we? Do a Premier League side, and all the members who support them clubs play in a group of 8 with the 2 legends, and it's just a 3 magnificent days. It really is. And
where did you 2 guys meet? Because you obviously know each other really well.
Yeah, that was back on the Euros. I was doing an evening with an England game. We're playing France. And I think Mark Anderson put it together, his group. Was it for his charity or was it for his foundation?
No, yeah, what it was is Mark Anderson has the Anderson Foundation, and obviously Eligo. And he was doing the event. I was drunk in the back of a taxi in France with Mark, and he was on the phone to you saying, would you mind doing this commentary for one of my charity events? And I went, who's that? And he went, Glenn Hoddle. And I was like, sorry, was that Glenn Hoddle? I'm a Spurs fan. Was that Glenn Hoddle? He said, yeah. I mean, I can't believe you could have at least put him on loudspeaker. Anyway,
Really?
basically, I said to him, why don't we half and half it? Half Eligo, half you, your charity. And I think there was originally going to be 30 or 40 or 50 marks. And then, I don't know if you remember, Glenn, then we had about 200 in the end.
Yeah, it was a big event,
it was
wasn't
St Pancras Hotel, I think it was.
it? Yeah, the Renaissance, yeah.
And and basically, I said hi to you and said, do you
That's
play
good,
golf?
yeah.
And you said, yeah. And then I said, all right, well, I've got an idea. What do you think of this? Well, it wasn't an idea. It was you asked me what was an ego, because I think you were on earth that, and then you joined, which is great. And
It's been an unbelievable journey for you to come up with that idea, and I applaud you for it, because it's wonderful, and it's been so successful. You got America as well, got a lot of courses in America. I haven't really gone over there and played there yet. You and I were meant to be going to the Masters in April. It was my bucket list thing. I needed to, with what happened to me 2 years ago. It's one of them things I said, right, that's it. I'm cancelling all my football for that week, and we were due to go over, but obviously with COVID it got cancelled, and November now playing. It's not quite the same. It's very good watching and that, but I'm probably going to wait till next April, hopefully, when everyone will be there again.
Yeah, and I believe you, me, Glenn, it'd be the best golfing week experience you'll ever experience, because they call them patrons, don't they, on the commentary, which is unusual. Every other golf event they call it crowds and spectators, but it's patrons.
Yeah.
And that's because you can have, like, I think they only have like 20,000, 15,000 a day, whereas if you think about the Open, that they'll have 80,000 a day. So it's like VIP basically as a spectator. So even like Tiger Woods, you can easily see him because the crowds aren't that big. And it's not worth doing hospitality or anything there, because what you do is you go to the pro shop on the first day, you buy one of those chairs and you plonk the chairs somewhere. So basically they don't have stands. They have a few stands, but not many. But basically everyone buys. I mean, I'm going to set up shop selling chairs outside Augusta. But basically everyone buys a green chair, and literally everybody, and they basically put it somewhere, and the idea is that anyone could sit on them until you come back and want to sit on your own chair. So
that's great.
You put your business card on the back of the chair, say, but if somebody's got a better location, I just swap business cards when they're not there. But I shouldn't have said that.
I'm surprised they haven't taken you out of the course and banned you from. You're making skid marks on the par 3. You're swapping business cards on chairs. You must be on the blacklist. I can't believe that they'll let you in. Listen, we're going to talk about this year's event quickly to get some tips from everybody. But that John Rahm shot in the practice round on Monday, where he did a skimmer over the water, nobody likes to show off. How on earth did he know that was going to work?
It's a tradition. Every practice day on Tuesday and Wednesday, every player, when they get to the 16th, they do what they call a skimmer. And what they do is they put the ball on the bank on the downhill lie. They get a 4-iron out and they skim it across. But just imagine to make a hole-in-one doing that. It's beyond a joke. But he's had 2 hole-in-ones in practice.
He has. Yeah, he has, and that's a worry to us, because I've backed him, and he might have peaked a bit too early.
I think Rams, because his iron play, his whole game is unbelievable. So Rams, my big pick. Obviously, Dustin Johnson looks good, doesn't he?
He does.
So he's a threat. I actually had an each way bet with Westwood. He had a great first round. Sadly, he didn't have such a good, I know he hasn't finished his round, but
I've backed Westwood as well, Warren, I think.
Yeah, Justin Thomas looks good. I mean,
they all look good, don't they? They look as
my pick's Rahm, though. My pick, I think Rahm's going to win it.
I've had a sneaky little one on Cantley as well. Cantley's a very good player. Whether he's got the mentality to go to the last day and the back 9, as they all say, that's when the tournament really starts, I don't know, but he's a very, very consistent player. Okay.
It's interesting. One of the things Paul mentioned when I was talking to him a couple of days ago, and you'll know this, Glenn, is it's going to be easier for the people like Cantley to win without crowds, because the crowds create the pressure. And, there's been 2 first-time major winners this year. I know one of them was DeChambeau's, but at the end of the day, winning your first major is the hardest thing in golf to do. And, I think you're right, there's going to be the doors more open than it has done in previous years, because there's no crowds, I think.
It's interesting you bring that point up, but it's just come to mind, bringing it back to football, because there's been more goals scored since lockdown, no crowds in the stadium. And I think that, that is a major effect on certain players. A lot of players feel the pressure of a crowd, whether it's your home crowd, sometimes getting on your back if you're 1-0 down, that can have a burden, that can have a negative effect, or your crowd, getting behind you and lifting you when they need to lift you because you're chasing a game or you're ahead of the game. So I think the crowds coming in has taken pressure off players and off teams, and I think that's consequently why we're seeing so many goals in football. You've just said exactly the same there, that the lack of crowds will help the more sort of not say average player, but not the world number 1, 2 or 3. They strive on that. They love that. Tiger must love that, that feeling that everyone's behind him. Everyone wants him to do well again, like he experienced last time round. That's not there for him this year. And I think there are a few players that it's spot on, really, what you're saying. It's human nature. If you feel the energy of, and golf's a sport where there isn't anyone out there trying to put you off. If you go away from home and there's a crowd, and you're the away team, you got a crowd that wants to put you off. They're going to boo you if you're taking a corner. You're going to get hit by coins. I've been there, I know. Where golf's such a lovely sport, everyone wants to see everybody play really well. So that energy is completely different, and the atmosphere is different to, say, a football stadium. And I think, who knows? It might be somebody that we lower down the echelons of the game that might end up winning this year.
Well, Nicholas said that the easiest tournaments to win were majors, because a third haven't got the bottle or haven't the confidence. They talk themselves out of it. A third just haven't got the ability. So he said, I'm only competing against a third of the field, whereas every other tournament I'm competing against the whole field.
Yeah, it's clever.
And the interesting thing, that's how difficult it is to win a major, I guess. But like McIlroy, they asked him earlier on in the week, what's your view about no crowds? He said it's just so much more relaxing. It's so much easier to not feel the intensity and the pressure. And then, as you say, Glenn, it definitely has a big factor. Even in golf, even though you're not, as you say, the crowds aren't trying to pick you off, but I guess the intimidation, it's the atmosphere, the environment.
I suppose the closest golf get to it a little bit is the Ryder Cup, is when there's 2 teams, and that's a little bit more. And I think that's why the European players, they strive on it. They love that. They love that feeling of being a team. And if they're in America, that mentality of we're against the world, and over here, well, in Europe, is football chants. It's very similar to a football atmosphere that we've made it, which intimidates the Americans in many ways, because they're not quite used to that banter and that sort of feeling. It's only, was it Bubba Watson that started, getting the crowd going? He loved it, and that's Bubba, isn't it? But no, it's the difference between football and golf is quite amazing, really. But that's why all footballers love it. We love playing for golf.
It's interesting that you mentioned about the Ryder Cup, because about Europe and the US. Again, Paul was obviously a past captain and played in a few. The Europeans all socialise, mix. They're friends, they're buddies, they're a team. Yeah. So for example, at breakfast, even if they sit with their caddy. I mean, basically, all the 12 European players sit for breakfast or sit for lunch together, have fun, joking. Whereas the American team, there was 12 individual tables. They had their own table with their own team. The caddy, the psychologist, the fitness trainer, the nutritionist. Yeah. And they were their teams of individuals, and that's a significant reason why I think, you know, the Europeans do so much better than the Americans.
When it comes to a team, the spirit of the team is that you look next door, you know, you look left and right and across that table, and you're doing it for them. You want to win more for them than you do yourself. And when you've got that energy, when you've got that spirit amongst you, that's unbeatable, really, in many ways, because you're all good players. And that's what a team does. Obviously, a golfer normally would be just, you know, internally being aggressive with himself, wanting to win. You know, it was all about himself, number one. But I think that's what the Europeans have definitely got, and the Americans haven't quite sussed that out yet. Let's keep it quiet.
The best thing about not having crowds there is not having that bloke shout, "Get in the hole!" when he hits a tee shot off a par 5. Thank God he's out. He should be out like you. He's out. Get him out.
Banned for life.
Oh, shocking. Listen, I've got to ask you, we don't know who's going to win. We all think John Rahm, because I backed him as well. So God knows he's got no hope, has he, really, with 3 of us on his back. But what's going to be the winning score? At the moment, on Saturdays, we talk -9. 9 under is the score at the moment, Warren. What's going to win it? Not who, but what kind of score do you think this year?
12 under.
I can't believe it. You tapped my phone. That's exactly, I was asked the same thing at the beginning of the...
When I backed Ram, you said, "Oh, I can't believe that. I'm going to do the same." By the way, I'm not very good at predicting things like bets and scores, Glenn, so I'd stop copying you.
Oh, dear. Yeah.
9 under right now is leading. 12 under. I think they're going to get those greens quicker and tougher.
Warren, thanks very much for your time on this Saturday. Appreciate your insight into the Augusta golf course and that terrific story.
The changing the business cards on the chairs and sliding down the 3rd fairway, because I do want to go with Glenn next year.
We're going to highlight those and put them right at the beginning of the interview so people know what they're dealing with.
Chris, I've got a friend who went there the other week, like months ago, and they said there's a wanted picture of Warren in the clubhouse.
You'll have to go incognito when you turn up next time, and don't try and sell any chairs either. Terrific stuff.
Brilliant. That's why I'm going. I'm going as Warren's assistant. I'm the chairman.
So a great interview with Warren Pike there, talking about the Masters. You're going to be the chairman. That's terrific. What a line that was, Glenn. We hope that you can go next April to tick that one off your bucket list. I know it's been right there for a while or two. And April next year could be a time when they let the crowds back in. Certainly in America, they seem to be a bit more flexible. But it's not been the greatest for John Rahm. He's been right up there. We all tipped him 9 under on the final day. But Dustin Johnson, DJ, has been flying out the traps, hasn't he?
He's been so consistent. You're just sort of looking and you're thinking, well, he's the world's number 1. But is he going to make a mistake? And the rest of the field are waiting for him to pounce if he does. And at the moment, he's not giving any sort of glimmer, is he, of a mistake? Yeah. What I've seen of it so far. And, I think he needs to make a couple of mistakes for the field or someone in the field to pop out and really sort of put him under some pressure. But no, John Rahm really yesterday blew it a little bit. He was a bit erratic, wasn't he, off the tee, and he hit some poor shots. And that's the difficulty in golf. I can imagine is playing in a golf tournament, such a big tournament like that. You can't win it with one shot, but you can actually lose it and put yourself out of a tournament. It's what it is, and that's why it's such a delicate and a difficult game to play and to actually win when you've got all that that ability competing at a very, very high level. So fair dues to Dustin Johnson. He's been absolutely fantastic, and if he wins it from here, he deserves it because he's been the most consistent.
Yeah, we'll let you go and watch the final 9 or 10 holes of that before the England game starts with Belgium. They've organised this quite well in Augusta. Belgium after the goal. Well done to them.
It's perfect, isn't it? Just don't tell anyone else in the family.
Okay. No one's going to know that you're glued to the TV all day.
I think they're going to watch a Christmas film, but they're not.
A Christmas Carol starring Dustin Johnson. Well, Enjoy all of that. And we'll be back for episode 11. The Premier League back is next week. We've got Leeds Arsenal. We're going to preview that, but we'll leave you with the golf and the thought of us not winning and our bets once again.
Our money going down the drain again.
Again.
That's all for today. See you next week.